What is intelligence and how intelligent are you? I'm going to be listing all the key aspects of intelligence I've discovered so far. I've got 17 points. Some of them may have a little bit of overlap and some of them may have subsections in of themselves. And I'm going to be comparing them to animals, AI, and our body. Then after that, I'm just going to be going over a whole lot of random points that I've got written down about intelligence. So first up, I'll go through and list 1 to 17, the different points, and then we'll go back through in more detail. So the characteristics I'm saying intelligence must have for something to be intelligent are consciousness, the ability to acquire knowledge, number 2. Number 3 is to understand concepts and contexts, so understanding. Number 4 is application of that knowledge. Number 5 is the ability to problem solve. Number 6 is the ability to differentiate truth from fiction. Number 7 is morality, or knowing right from wrong. Number 8 is the ability to create complexity from simplicity and simplicity from complexity. I'm not sure what word you'd use to break that down specifically. Maybe complex to simple, simple to complex. And then number 9 is to be able to interpret sense data, so sensations and perceptions, and then to interpret and understand those things objectively. Number 10 is to act in beneficial self-interested ways. Number 11 is to come to intelligent conclusions. Number 12 is self-generated action or initiative. 13 is the ability to make and use tools like technology. Number 14 is the ability to use deductive and inductive reasoning, so essentially reasoning. 15 is the ability to imagine and create, imagination. 16 is the ability to adapt or error correct. And number 17 is the speed of all of these individual aspects, the speed of that process. And so that's what I'm calling intelligence. And let's go back to number 1, consciousness. So consciousness is awareness. It is the ability to make choices, to have volition, for free will. And it's not automatic, or consciousness is, but the ability to make choices, right? Which is the derivation of or from consciousness, the ability to choose on the micro and macro scale. So I have the free will ability to move my hand up like this, and I had on a more macro scale the choice to make this video. And I think on a scale or a sliding continuum of intelligence, because obviously there's less intelligent and more intelligent, the more intelligent people, beings, are more willing to express this volition, to choose things that are good for them and acquiring knowledge and applying knowledge, all these aspects. And also coupled with this is the desire to learn and curiosity. This could almost be its own aspect, but I decided to put it in here. So desire to learn, curiosity, and these choices come from values because values demand choices. So intelligence requires values. If something can't value anything, then it's not intelligent. So intelligence requires values and values demand choices. Only beings with awareness that have the sensations of pain and pleasure can value anything, to prefer pleasure over pain. A rock can't do that, computers can't do that, lots of things can't do that, but things that are intelligent can. And the greater the awareness, the more clarity is available to exercise that intelligence. Little caveat I'll add here too, by no means is this list exhaustive. I know I'm going to go through this video and in probably only weeks or months, I will look back at it and I'm going to say, oh, wow, okay, that needs to be edited, that's changed, or I'll just have a lot of things to add on to this, maybe more points or refining of points, merging of points. And I'm not going to go into a heap of detail on each of these aspects as well. Some of them I may just breeze through. I just want to list them and put them out there. On the lower end of the intelligence spectrum, primarily talking about humans here, It would be to have no choice, which would be unconsciousness. Well, you could look at that as a rock, right? A rock would be totally unconscious, or a car or something. Now bringing back in humans, someone who is comatose. They're unconscious, they're unable to exercise their intelligence, because someone who's comatose is still intelligent, just unable to exercise it at that present moment because they're unconscious. So there's that sliding spectrum. The more conscious, the more aware one is of the nature of themselves and reality, the more intelligent they typically will be. When one is apathetic, lower down on the scale, that's in comparison or contrast to desire and curiosity to learn and know more about themselves and reality, then obviously they're going to be lower down on the intelligence spectrum. Lower intelligent people typically will willfully block out their awareness, their consciousness about specific things, topics, generally out of fear or disinterest. But I'm not going to be psychologizing too much in this video. A little bit, but not too much. And then when we look at animals, animals are alive and they appear to have consciousness. And how can we say that? It's because animals appear to act in similar ways to us, as in self-preservation, reproduction, growth, the other categories of life or characteristics of life. And I think ultimately it's really hard to be certain of other people's consciousness, of humans and maybe even aliens or animals. Like, how can we really know that others are conscious? How can we be certain? I can say with very high probability that other beings outside of myself are going to be conscious because they act and behave in similar manners to the way I would when in those same situations. But to be certain, that's a very tricky one here. So when we're looking at animals, they do appear to be conscious compared to a robotic dog or something. Now let's have a look at AI. Is AI even intelligent? Artificial intelligence? Well, it doesn't have consciousness, meaning it doesn't have free will, it doesn't have choice. So just from looking at this first aspect of intelligence, we can determine that AI is not intelligent. It cannot be intelligent because it doesn't have consciousness. It doesn't have awareness, it has no free will, it can't choose. So something that lacks the ability to make choices, like a rock, like a car, like your microwave, like your oven, like your computer, like AI, isn't intelligent. They're not intelligent things. They may be wonderful, like a fridge can keep your drinks cool, or a car can ferry you around the city, and they can do all these amazing things. AI can write a script, it can do fantastic stuff. It doesn't mean it's intelligent, right? Because you have to have that consciousness there. And so when we also look at the body doesn't have any consciousness. I don't think the body is intelligent either. When we're looking at all these individual aspects, and we're only in the first one out of 17, the body isn't intelligent. You are intelligent, you are conscious. Because without you in the body's dead. It's just a hunk of flesh. There is no life in the body without you inhabiting the body. And you can get into all sorts of discussions and arguments about the spirit or the soul or whatever is actually working there. But let's just look at the fact that the body is not conscious. It doesn't make choices. It is not intelligent. You are intelligent. And good thing the body isn't conscious, because anesthetic wouldn't work and you wouldn't be able to sleep. There may be some debate for that too. All right, moving on. Not getting bogged down too much on each point. Number 2 is the ability to acquire knowledge. In this context, I'm actually talking about information, because the way I differentiate information and knowledge, information is just any kind of data, whether it's true or false, and I define knowledge as information that is true, based typically in reality, objective reality. But Hagrid, being the gamekeeper of Hogwarts, is knowledge, but it's about a fantasy. So it's very context specific, remembering that all knowledge is contextual. All knowledge is contextual. So the ability to learn easily and acquire information, and obviously when you are acquiring information, it requires memory, somewhere to store this knowledge. Up on the high end of the spectrum, someone who was super intelligent, or something that was super intelligent, with this aspect would be able to acquire knowledge, information very quickly and would be able to store that. Someone who is not very intelligent, further down that spectrum, they would have difficulty learning, acquiring new information, new knowledge. And there may be reasons for this, because they have poor memory, or they have particular trauma which is blocking them from learning a specific topic, or they're just disinterested and not passionate about the topic they're learning. They may have brain damage, they may be fatigued. There's lots of different reasons. Maybe just less intelligent genetically. That would require a lot of study to really go into that very deeply. Next, with animals. So animals can obviously acquire knowledge and learn skills. It's a lot more limited and they have a lot less capacity in comparison to humans, but they still can. You can teach dogs tricks. Lots of animals, you can teach them tricks and teach them new things that they didn't know naturally when they were in the wild. Monkeys use rocks to crack open coconuts, whether they've got the coconut and they're cracking on the rock, or got a rock cracking it on the coconut. When it comes to AI can't gain knowledge per se. It can be inputted with information, and that information may or may not be true. If the information actually is true, then it can be said that AI can acquire knowledge. But it's at its programmer's discretion where that AI gets that knowledge from, and the programmer is essentially God to the AI, because it tells the AI program what is true and what is false. So the programmer can be totally biased and can feed the AI totally incorrect information, and the AI may think that cats look like dogs and dogs look like elephants or whatever, because AI cannot understand. Well, that's getting more into the next one, but it only transforms symbols. It's symbolic, we are semantic. It's like a transformation device in a way. And when we look at the body can't learn, it can't acquire knowledge. It's only doing what it's been encoded to do, or in response to what you do to the body. You can't give the body more information. The brain may store that information in a way, but it doesn't have it. You have it. Just like when you put information on a hard drive in your computer, the hard drive per se doesn't have access to it, you have access to it. It's your information that you understand and value. And it's debatable whether information and knowledge is actually stored in the brain or in our cells or in our energetic field, because there's cases of people getting heart transplants and some memories are being transferred with a heart transplant, which is pretty freaky. You should check that out. Some murder cases have apparently been solved from this. Even then, the body doesn't acquire knowledge, you do, and it's stored in the body. But still, a lot more research needs to go into that area. Number 3, understanding concepts and their context. So, able to recognize facts of reality according to their identity and nature. Understanding that everything has a nature and identity, including words, and this is getting a lot into language as well. Having language, because all concepts are communicated internally and externally via language. People often don't know this, but the primary purpose of language isn't for communication. That's its secondary purpose. The primary is for cognition, is to be able to think. Without words and concepts, we would struggle to think. That would be a terrible existence. No, thank you. So not just knowing something, but being able to change the context. That's what understanding is. It's not just memorizing it, but it's being able to change the context of a particular concept, word, and transform it into a metaphor, create many examples, particular concretes from a principle, and can restate knowledge in their own words and recreate it. So there's a big difference between just knowing something and totally being able to understand something. It's like, I know dogs bark, but do I really understand why they bark? Well, there could be lots of different reasons, communication, they're bored, but again, I don't really understand why dogs bark, but I know that they do, and it's bloody annoying. So, just an example. Let's go lower down the intelligence spectrum. Someone who doesn't understand concepts and context very well, they may have a good memory and they know many things, but they don't know what that knowledge means on a broader scale, or why what they know is true, why it's true, and what to do with that information. And you might get some people who don't have a good memory at all, and they don't understand much at all. And then when we look at animals, animals don't seem to really understand much. They know things, but they don't understand concepts in the same way we do. That's one of the biggest differentials between humans and animals, is we are a lot more conceptual. We don't even know if they're conceptual at all. Now, you can't teach a dog that a toy fireman is similar to an actual fireman. You might be able to say, get the fireman, and teach a dog to go get the little puppet, the little toy dog, and the toy fireman, and it'll pick it up and bring it back over to you. But if you try and teach the dog that this toy fireman is like the human fireman wearing the uniform, it's just not going to understand that. It's going to go, huh? They're two totally different things. It can't wrap its head around that concept that they're similar, or a picture of a fireman, or a drawing of a fireman, or a huge statue of a fireman, a book about a fireman. The dog doesn't get that. It's perceptual based, only perceptual based, not conceptually based. The dog will know, the dogs or cats, that food comes from the kitchen. When you walk into the kitchen, the dog's hungry, it comes over and starts to annoy you, wants the food, but it doesn't know why food comes from the kitchen, or how that comes to be, how that happens. The dog and cat doesn't even know why you feed it. It doesn't understand that it's a pet and that you want to look after it. It doesn't understand the relationship. It's got no conception of that. Animals may know they have a name and they'll respond to a certain sound, but they don't know what the concept of a name is. They don't get that. How are they meant to understand that? It doesn't understand what the word sit means when you say it, but you can train a dog to respond to that sound, but it doesn't know that when you sit down, when someone else sits down, it's the same thing that's happening there. It's the same concept. They have a small idea on the what, right? But not on the how, and especially the why when it comes to these concepts. Animals aren't so good at that. And when we look at AI doesn't understand anything. Animals are above that. AI doesn't get anything. It transforms symbols. It's coded to act in a particular way. Like, if you want to understand this more, just look into John Searle and the Chinese room experiment. There's so many YouTube videos talking about that. I'm not going to redo it. You can look that one up yourself, but that explains how it's just symbolic. It doesn't actually understand anything. Computers don't understand anything. The AI is coded to act in a particular way. The way you use it changes what the AI does. Just like a drum or a piano when you're playing music. The piano has the keys, but it's up to you what kind of sounds or music you make using it. Or the keyboard on your laptop. The piano doesn't understand music. Even though you think, well, it's making all the sounds of music. Surely the piano understands music, doesn't it? Like, the keyboard on my laptop understands words and writings because it's doing it. I press on all these buttons and it's showing me a letter H when I press the H. Surely the laptop understands, doesn't it? Otherwise, how is it showing me a letter H? Well, that's the way it's been built and designed and encoded and programmed. AI doesn't understand language or letters, but it gives feedback like it does. It's a simulation, it's imitating, it's copying. Just like a car understands that when you put your foot on the pedal and you want to accelerate, right, the car goes faster. The car understands that. It doesn't understand. It's a mechanistic action happening, isn't it? Like, imagine tricking someone from hundreds of years ago into believing that the car actually understood what you wanted to accelerate or brake, and you're communicating with the car by pressing on those pedals, right? And because, yeah, it's a mechanistic action that's actually happening. But imagine telling someone that the car is angry because it's not going anymore, because it's hungry and it won't go any further until you refuel it. So, oh, the car's really angry, yeah, it's hungry, it needs to be filled up, otherwise it's not going to respond. Some people are gullible and would fall for that, and obviously would be lower down on the intelligence spectrum. And the thing is, it's the same thing with AI. People thinking AI is intelligent, thinking the term artificial intelligence is just a marketing scam. It is a scam. It is not intelligent. It does not understand anything. Just because a parrot says fuck you doesn't mean it understands what it's saying. It's just making noises. Number 4 is the ability to apply knowledge, application of knowledge. For instance, someone learns how to tie their shoelaces, then they can also apply that knowledge to tying their waist belt, tying any other rope in the same way that they tie their shoelaces. They know how to translate and transform that knowledge into new applications. Say they learn the word concomitantly and they know when to use it. They get taught once or twice how to change a tire and then they know how to do that. They can apply and use that knowledge. It's just not knowledge sitting in their mind that they never actually use. Ultimately, the purpose of acquiring knowledge is to apply it, is to actually use it. Someone who knows a lot of stuff but never uses it, well, are they really that intelligent? On the lower end of the spectrum, someone would have trouble utilizing their learnt knowledge. They wouldn't actually apply it. So they'd learn how to tie their laces, but they couldn't apply that same knowledge to tying their waist belt or any other kind of knot unless it was on shoes. They don't know how and when to use new words. For instance, they may want to lose body fat and they know they must eat less and move more, but they just can't apply that simple knowledge. They have trouble, and there'll be many factors that go into why that's so. Animals may have a limited ability to learn new things, but what they do learn, they can apply. Say when it's new hunting tactics, or not just new, but just their own hunting tactics. If you teach your cat or dog how to toilet train, I had a kid and I trained that thing how to use a bloody toilet. It was a squatter's toilet, so not a ceramic bowl above the ground toilet. I trained that thing how to crap in the dunny in a few days, less than a week. It took only a few times to do that. So I think that was good on my part and the little kiddie's part. Toilet training, what we're training a puppy, oh, that's a lot harder. A puppy, an American Staffy, difficult. The kitten was a piece of cake. Animals can beg for food. They know if they put the little puppy dog eyes that they can manipulate you and get you to give them food. They can apply that knowledge. They've learned that and they can use that in the future. And there'll be lots more use case scenarios there. When we look at AI can apply the information it's given according to the parameters it's been programmed with. It can only do what it's been allowed to do and at the limits of the programmer. They must wait upon the commands of a user. ChatGPT doesn't just do stuff. It's entirely dependent on a user to apply any knowledge, to give answers or feedback, or to rewrite scripts or to do anything like that. And just for your information, I haven't used any AI to rewrite any of this at all, actually. Though I'm not opposed to it, but I just haven't. The body can't apply knowledge or change beyond its predetermined functions. You can train it to be more endurance-based or stronger via different types of training methods, but the body isn't applying knowledge. You are to your body. You can train your body with muscle and nervous system memory, like martial arts and sports, right? But the body isn't applying knowledge. Because to think the body is applying knowledge, it would be like saying a highway applied knowledge about improving traffic flow after people built an overpass and expanded the lanes. Nah. Intelligence acted on a system to improve its capacity for a desired result, whether building the roads and the overpass, or if it was martial arts or marathon running, whatever it was. The intelligence, being us, the consciousness that makes us us, did that via the body or to the highway system. When we're applying knowledge and learning, it's ingraining and encoding into our neuron system, the neural network. Apparently it does something with myelin. It builds little fatty tubes or something around parts of our brain. I only know a little bit about that. I'm sure someone knows a lot more. The body is just a mechanistic cause and effect machine, in essence, a system that has particular functions. It's not intelligent. We are intelligent and we can use our body intelligently or very stupidly. Number 5 is the ability to problem solve. So high intelligence can solve problems in a variety of fields. The greater the variety, the higher the intelligence. The more things that someone can do, the greater the variety, like electrical engineering and chemistry to philosophy to aeronautics to etc., then someone is going to be more intelligent. And ultimately, this is my view and take on it. That's what I see as someone as being more intelligent who is good at a variety of fields rather than just one or two. If someone's good at lots of things, they're probably more intelligent. I mean, we get into more detail about skill and talent and how that works into intelligence and genius and IQ tests and general intelligence versus narrow intelligence. That's for later. High intelligence will seek and utilize optimal means of achieving objectives. And they'll use comparison, right, which is similarity and differences, reduction, and other reasoning strategies. But we get more into inductive and deductive reasoning later. I'll only touch on that a little bit because big topic. But similarity and differences, that's basically how we see and define and identify everything in reality is through those methods, and reduction is a fantastic strategy as well, reducing very high level conceptual ideas back to a perceivable level, like say capitalism. You know, you can't just look at capitalism or sovereignty or friendship, right? You have to bring all those things down lots of notches to perceivable elements. That's a process of reduction. High intelligence understands what would constitute as proof. If trying to prove something, right, because you always got to ask, well, if this was true, what would proof look like? What would a solution look like for this problem? What would a problem look like in this topic, this field? If someone said they had a problem with their skin, where you go, well, what would proof look like? Well, they'd have red skin, or it'd be blotchy, or it'd be a different color, or it'd be weird. And if someone was trying to say, oh, they don't have a skin problem, it's like, well, there's the proof. Like you can see it, it's perceptual. You're bringing it back down to reality. And also the transferability of context. So that's what helps with problem solving a lot. Transferability and context. Like say, for instance, building Lego is like, if someone uses Lego to build a bridge, then it's more likely that they're going to be able to use wood to build a small model bridge and then actually go and build a proper bridge, right? They are a transferability of skills and contexts using different models at different stages. That's what high intelligence does, has a great ability to solve problems. And first of all, has to know what a problem is, what a solution is, all that good stuff. So on the lower end of that spectrum of lower intelligence is not being good at solving problems, obviously, or only good in a narrow field. Someone who's really good at chemistry, but sucks at everything else, or insert topic. People on the lower end of the spectrum, they typically don't look for easier ways to complete tasks. Like say, for instance, in the past where people had to carry around water in buckets and they had to travel a long distance to just move water. Whereas someone came along who was obviously higher intelligence in that specific field, right? And you can get into the 9 different types of intelligence as well, like maths and spatial and naturalistic. We'll touch on that a little bit later. And someone has figured out, let's build pipes. You know, let's build pipes to transform the water, transfer the water, and then let's build pumps and gravity pumps and all this kind of stuff to improve the quality of life, because intelligence, a big part of it is improving the quality of life. And I'll come up with a definition of intelligence later on, or a explanation of what I think it is. And also on the lower end of the spectrum, people who can't find solutions to problems they don't know exist. Well, you can't fix something if you don't know it's broken, hey? So that's a big part of intelligence, being able to recognize problems. That's the only way you can solve a problem. And then when we look at animals, some animals have the ability to solve basic problems, and generally when it's paired with food rewards, that's the primary motivator for animals. Humans have lots of different types of motivators, food being a big one, sex and reproduction and wealth and power and fame and all that other kind of stuff are rewards. And we touch a little bit more about rewards as well later on, and how that links into intelligence and just taking action. But with animals, there's obviously limits to the things that they can figure out. AI actually doesn't solve any problems, which is funny to say because people think, oh, AI is going to solve all these problems. No, AI isn't going to solve anything. A human programs them to perform lots of calculations faster than they can do it, and then presents the calculated result. So really, the programmer solved the problem. Say if it was the whole protein folding thing. I haven't looked too much into that, but I've heard about it, and AI was meant to have figured it out. But it's like, AI didn't do it. The programmer wrote some piece of code that could perform calculations way faster than he could. And then what he designed, that software program, the AI, it's not an artificial intelligence, it's a software program. Ultimately, it's an algorithmic instrument, different ways to call it. AI doesn't exist, right? But it was the tool he used. It's like saying the hammer built the house. No, the carpenter using the hammer built the house, but everyone's clapping and cheering. The hammer built the house. The screwdriver put the house together. No, it doesn't work like that. When we look at the body doesn't solve problems. It has individual parts and they merely perform their function. The body doesn't have problems either. The body doesn't have any problems. You have problems. If it's a blocked artery or heart attack, whatever it is, it's not the body's problem. It's your problem because you're the one experiencing the body. It's just like when a car has a indicator light that's out. It's not the car's problem. It's your problem because you need the car's indicator to work. The car doesn't care. It doesn't think, it's not conscious. The car doesn't solve the problem of spinning the wheels to get it moving. The engineers who designed the car made it do that. The function of a piston in the car is to go up and down and it causes compression. The function of mitochondria is to produce energy for the cell. It's all automated and mechanistic. AI, cars, and the body don't problem solve, but they all solve a problem for us. That's what they do. They solve problems for us. And when we think about the human body, it's like, well, how did we actually get it? Did someone design the human body for us, aliens, or did some magical god being created, or was it evolution? How did the body come? That's topics for another video. That's a hard one to figure out. We're just looking at the facts, just looking at what we have. Number 6 is the ability to differentiate truth from fiction. So someone on the higher end of the intelligence spectrum doesn't take anything on faith, right? They use discernment and reason to distinguish reality from fantasy, to objectively identify everything in its actual and accurate nature, in its identity. So to do this, though, it requires a high mental fitness, a lot of mental energy. And also higher on the intelligence spectrum is the ability to deceive and to not be deceived. Because it does take a lot of intelligence to deceive, and we get into animals here as well. Animals deceive and humans, deceivers, but also the ability to see through that disguise, that illusion, that deception, to see through that is on the higher end of the intelligence spectrum. And then lower down on that, would be people who have a lot of trouble discerning fact from fiction. They just can't tell what's real and what's fantasy. And a lot of the time people get them mixed up and they think fantasy is reality and they think reality is fantasy. That's a very common problem. People on the lower end of the intelligence spectrum are often credulous, so gullible and highly susceptible to brainwashing and mind control, and very, very often fall for lies of all sorts, and it's typically because they're relying on faith over reason because of a low mental fitness. Because to exercise intelligence obviously requires energy, it requires thought, there's a process, there's focus, concentration that needs to happen. It doesn't just happen automatically. Like perception just happens automatically, but thinking and reasoning and exercising intelligence, it takes thought, it takes effort, it takes volition. So when we look at animals, there's lots of deception and lots of deception in the animal kingdom. Praying mantises, they deceive. There's this white praying mantis. It looks like just a plant, and it'll lure in other animals and it gets them. There's the anglerfish with the light on its head. And when we think about these animals, is it like, do they know they are pretending and lying? Because to deceive is to pretend, it is to lie and play the part of something being untrue. It's like putting the worm on the fishing hook. You're deceiving the fish, you're tricking it. Like, we know what we're doing when we do that, but do those animals and insects understand what's going on? It's hard to tell, really. Some animals can actually recognize when you are trying to fool them. Dogs, for example, there's experiments where they put like food under a tub or a cup, and then they move it around, and people trick the animals, and eventually the animals can figure out they're getting fooled and they just get bored and go away, or they just recognize the little trick. But also animals can be fooled. They can be fooled as well. I saw this fantastic video with a drongo bird, how it was gaining the trust of meerkats. So I thought this was showing quite a lot of intelligence, really. A lot of thinking, and it was quite amazing. This drongo bird in Africa, what it does, or what I saw it do in this video, I think David Edinburgh was commentating on it, and was doing the commentary. The drongo bird would make a warning call that an eagle was coming. The meerkats would run and hide away from the predator. Then they would come out again. So the drongo bird, 1 point for trust. The meerkats go back to foraging, and then it calls a false alarm. They run away, and then it swoops down and gets some of their food, some bugs, right? Big centipedes and gross things, and then eats them. And then they come back out, and it tries to do it again and to fool them. But the meerkats catch on this time and are like, oh, no, we get it. But then what happens, right, is they hear one of the meerkat's sentries making a noise, and then they all run and hide again. But what had actually happened is that the drongo bird was able to mimic the sound of the meerkat's sentry call. And then it came down and got a scorpion. I was like, oh, holy shit, that's almost some evil shit that's going on there. Wow. That's like Predator. With the first Predator movie with Arnold, the Predator alien is mimicking the human's voices, like, come over here, I need help, so to lure Arnold in. Crazy. So with AI has no way of knowing truth from fiction. It just doesn't know it. It has to accept what the programmers feed it as objective reality, and it's not even accepting it, because to accept something means you have the offer of, or the ability to not accept it, but AI doesn't even have that. It's just fed information that the programmers will label true, not true, and that's the AI's objective reality. It doesn't exist in the real world. It exists in a simulated computer world where the entire environment is created by the developer. Everything it knows, or everything it is, knows and has, is given to it by its programmer. Without awareness, perception, and reason, it can't inductively discover reality as it is. It must restate it as it's been taught. So when it comes to the body doesn't know truth or fiction either, because it doesn't know anything. You know things. The heart doesn't know it needs to pump. It just does. That's one of its functions. You know it needs to pump, or whatever the theory about how the heart actually works. It just does its thing for you to stay alive. Lungs, the stomach, etc. The body doesn't know those things. It's just performing how it must. It's choiceless in the process. Number 7 is the ability to know right from wrong, understanding objective morality. Intelligence on the higher end of the spectrum can study and learn and discover what this actually means, that morality isn't relative, it's objective, and that's very clearly understandable when one studies that field. And a lot of it is just can be self-learned too, because you can only really know right from wrong through the experience of pain and pleasure, that one should not treat others how one would not like to be treated. So higher end of the intelligence spectrum understands rights, equity, fairness. Even though someone intelligent can understand these things, doesn't mean they'll choose to be good. Often, A lot of the times the most intelligent people are very, very evil, but they can still understand all these things. So on the lower end of the spectrum, people that are less intelligent don't understand that morality is objective. They think it's subjective, they think it's relevant, they think it's just totally whimsical, it depends on the situation. People on the lower end of the spectrum don't believe there is a good or evil. They don't believe it can be known, and there's all matter of perspectives and all this stuff. I think that's much further down on the spectrum, but in a way you could almost say this is a particular skill or a field of knowledge, and maybe not an aspect of intelligence itself. And that is debatable, because a lot of it does need to be studied. It's not just innate. People think goodness is just innate in human beings, but I think that's more so the ability to help, right? And people can try to help but end up causing a lot more harm and cause problems, and ultimately be very bad in their attempts to help. They can actually do evil things and not understand they're doing evil because they're lacking the intelligence or the time committed to learn what they're actually doing, because of all, lots of different reasons. Low mental fitness, disinterest, apathy, distractions, whatever it is. So I just checked my camera to make sure everything was recording properly, and I realized it was zoomed in 1.46 times more than it should be. So you had the close-up of my face. Whatever it is what it is. You got to enjoy that experience. Moving on with a proper zoom here. So when we look at animals, they fight their own species all the time, and they don't really understand right or wrong. They just act on emotions and mood swings or instincts and mating and whatnot. They may lose a fight or get unjustifiably attacked, cats or dogs, but do they have the conceptual understanding to know that the other dog or cat that attacked them for no reason was bad or shouldn't have done that? Or do they just know to stay away so that they don't get hurt? And when they torture their own species or other species, because I've seen this, just the crazy things that monkeys do to their own kids, if you can call them kids or babies, and what they can do to other species, like, do they really understand what they're doing? Ooh, that's questionable. Yeah, I wonder. When we look at AI, AI has no awareness, no choice, no body to feel pain or pleasure, and no way of understanding right from wrong, good from evil, except by what it's told. The body can only know right from wrong in the context of performing its functions, and it's not bad to it, it's bad to you. The body doesn't care about the clogged artery or that you want to grow muscle and become a bodybuilder. It's just going to respond to the stimuli you give it. It has its own innate ability to perform tasks, digest food, produce bile, and if you poison it too much, it will respond, like cause and effect, to rectify your mistakes. You did something wrong, for instance, consumed toxins, drank too much alcohol, smoked too many cigarettes, whatever you did, and it tries to do something good for you, which is to detox the poison out. And it's not from a care for you or a care for itself or choice, but it's an automatic, mechanistic process. It's a response. It's not even a response, it's a reaction, such as detoxing the poison. It doesn't care if it lives or dies. You care if you live or you die. It doesn't have consciousness. You do. You care. All right, now on to number 8. The ability to create complexity from simplicity and simplicity from complexity. On the higher end of the intelligence spectrum, people can make complex things, like art, legality, for instance. That's the perfect example of a bunch of people taking something quite simple, human interaction, not violating the golden rule of equity, which is to treat others as you wish to be treated, just understanding basic rights and objective morality, the 4 laws of morality. Create no harm, create no loss, be honest and ethical in your dealings, maintain the peace. And then the legal system has gone, you know what, let's make this simple thing and let's fuck it. Let's make it super duper complicated so no one understands. We make a lot of money. And then we could also look at creating complex stories, machines like cars or MRI machines, and making computer games. There's so many complex things that people are capable of doing, which is cool. And I define, well, what's complex? Complex, I'm saying, is something, a system that has lots of moving parts to it that all need to be put together in a correct sequence. And it takes a lot of time to build and to make. More intelligent people find it easier to break down the complex into simple parts and to do the opposite as well. So you can call this integration and disintegration. So integration pulling in, disintegration pulling apart, or construction, deconstruction. The ability to integrate all new information with all previously collected info and to make connections. So that's like an aspect in of itself, this part, to interconnect everything you've learned to everything else, and that helps with the breaking down of complexity to simplicity or simplicity to complexity. It's like Einstein said, one of the only quotes I actually like from that man, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. So there you go. And he was a genius after all, right? Next is on the lower end of the spectrum. Well, obviously people aren't able to do that very well. They find the complex confusing and overwhelming, and let's hope they find the simple easy enough to understand. With animals, they really do lack this ability to make anything complex. They may do some slightly complex things naturally, like ants build or termites build the big ant mound or termite mound, right? That could be considered reasonably complex, but it's not like building a computer, for example, or creating a store. It's something that's instinctually inside of them. They didn't need to learn it. Like, people don't come out of the womb knowing how to create a statute or a sci-fi novel. Right? It's something they have to learn. It's not pre-programmed into them. When we look at AI, AI can do this complex stuff if it was programmed to do this. Right? But that's dependent on the intelligence of the programmer. When we look at the body can't. It may be a complex system, lots of moving parts working together, but it's not able to make something simple complex or something complex simple. It doesn't do that. Just like a fancy watch or a jet engine, which are complex, advanced systems, they can't do that. They don't have the ability to act. Right? So they can't, just like the body can't. Number 9 is to interpret sense, data, and perceptions. So sensations like fear or hunger or heat or pain, right? They're sensations, and then perceptions, hearing, sight. What did I did this, hearing, sight, hearing, taste, touch, etc. And you can even consider thinking in their thoughts. So interpreting that, what you are perceiving and sensing, feeling, and understanding what's actually going on. Like putting your finger in water and seeing that it's kind of looks a bit bent, but not going, oh, my finger's broken, it's in the water. It's like, okay, there's obviously something going on where people didn't understand. There's some kind of optical light illusion, they have to figure that out. More intelligent people understand that perception has to be rationally understood via a process of reason. And we can look at all the different optical illusions and we can say, our perception's broken. No, our perception isn't broken. It's just working the way it does. It can't really make a mistake. It's just giving us this information, and it's up to us how we interpret that. Say, for instance, on the lower end of the spectrum, someone might go to the beach and they look at the water and they say, look, it curves. Right? Or they even go up in a plane and they say, look, the world curves, and it doesn't matter what you believe the shape of the earth is. That is inconsequential. When you stand at the beach, when you're in a plane and you look at the horizon, it's flat. No matter what shape, you think it's a bloody donkey or a teddy bear, a pizza, a chicken neck, that thing is flat, just according to our perceptions, right? But sometimes people misinterpret their perceptions because of things that they've been told, to put it in a very, very nice way. Sometimes, it's funny, I heard someone say, not naming any names, that when they squinted at the sun, it's like they thought they were seeing into a different dimension, right? But it's just like, if I squint at this light I've got on my camera now, it looks really weird. There's like a cross here, little light beams go everywhere. If I open my eyes more, I can see a bit of a rainbow around the light. I realize that's just a phenomena that's happening in this world that's based upon the way my eyes interact with light and the electrical transference in my brain. I'm sure someone knows a great deal more about every single causal connection than actually makes that happen. But it's being able to interpret that data correctly, objectively, what's actually happening. For instance, some people hear voices in their head, and maybe they are going through some kind of medical condition, or they are actually hearing other voices, but sometimes it's just the voices that are in their own head. And sometimes the subconscious can push up thoughts into our mind in different tones and different voices to try and get our attention, because we may be ignoring something and pushing something away, right? But then they think, oh, who's talking to me? Who's talking to me? You're talking to yourself, man. And I get it, there are some cases where maybe it is something else talking to them. It could be other humans with technology that are beaming thoughts into the head. It could be something entirely different. Save those discussions for other videos. When we look at animals, for example, most animals don't understand their own reflection when they look in a mirror. And that's hilarious when you watch gorillas like fight their own reflection, and oh, it's funny. But some animals like crows, elephants, monkeys can understand, and there's tests to do this. They can put chalk X on an elephant's head, and the elephant goes over to the mirror and it gets its trunk and it's trying to rub off the X. They open their mouth, they look inside their mouth, they do these cool things, and that's showing obviously a higher level of intelligence for an animal that is self-aware, that can understand this reflection is me. It's like, I don't know about shadows. They probably could, but can understand that shadow is connected to what they are. And for example, like some animals also get freaked out by illusions. I saw one where someone was standing in a zoo behind a glass, a window, and there was a monkey, and he did some magic trick and it just freaked the monkey out, because the monkey has some kind of understanding about how objective reality works, and its mind was blown. And it was like, wow. And so I think that's actually showing intelligence, to be able to be freaked out like that, because it's knowing, hold on, that was like a miracle. That was something that shouldn't happen, went outside of the ordinary, which was really cool. And yeah, the monkey freaked out, but then again, a lot of people freak out too when they see those magic tricks, until you learn how the trick is actually being done. So when we look at AI doesn't experience sense perception, doesn't experience anything. There's no one there to experience anything. It may get information from external instruments if a piece of software is hooked up to a camera or a microphone, just like your OBS software, your screen recording software can record your screen, it can record through the camera, and it can record through the mic. My phone software recording this right now, but it's like, it's not conscious, it's not intelligent. It's just an intelligently designed program that's being used as a tool to help me. The AI can't evaluate it outside the parameters it's been programmed with, and doesn't feel anything about the data. The body is our means of experiencing sense perception, right? It's our means of experiencing sense perception. It's our tool. One of the body's primary functions is as a sense instrument. It does lots of other things like movement and energy production, etc. But it's a huge sense instrument, like all our skin, it's just always sensing all this stuff. It's kind of cool in a way. The body doesn't respond to stimuli by thinking about it, but through a process of mechanistic action, right? I'll put my finger on my arm and all the hairs will send some kind of electrical signal down to my skin where there's nerves in the skin, and then it will go through, I don't know, up to my spine. It goes along all these electrical pathways to the brain, and then my consciousness feels it, and I'm aware, I understand. Like my finger touched here, and there's practically no delay, there's no lag, it's instantaneously. Wow, that's a pretty cool machine. However, this thing came to be. All right, interesting. The human body, it doesn't think about feeling pain. Oh, it just does it, right? It just does it. It can't consider not to feel. I can go and ignore the pain and go, yeah, I'm tough, I'm not doing it. Those people who stab themselves and they're like, yeah, I don't mean the Japanese, like the samurais stab themselves, but people who just stick metal all through their bodies everywhere, the weird Indians and whatnot. They can choose to like turn off that pain or to block it out, but the body doesn't. It'll still feel it unless you actually deaden the nerve cells. Martial artists do that to their shins. They get like metal cans and stuff. I've done that. You know, you try and numb your shins and then you kick. Better Bokao, that Thai Muay Thai fighter kicking down the bamboo trees. But you chose to do that. The body's not choosing to do that. The body doesn't think about absorbing nutrients or not. It just does or does not according to the conditions that you've placed upon it. Like the body doesn't choose to feel offended about anything. That's something you do. It doesn't interpret anything. It only responds in the limited way it can automatically without volition. It doesn't have the ability not to. It just does. Whereas you've got the ability not to do things, which is why you're alive and I'm making this video for you and not your body. Number 10 is that intelligence will act in beneficial, selfish, self-interested ways. So someone more intelligent, or intelligence in general, will look after their body and mind, thinking long term, will plan long range ideally, can conceptualize the future and its potential consequences. So that could almost be its own aspect by itself, to conceptualize the future and see consequences of actions. But we just got that linked in here with acting in beneficial, self-interested ways to look after oneself. For instance, people will plant food for the next season. People can plan for things which may not even happen, like they build bomb shelters. There's all sorts of planning or investing in all sorts of different things. And when we get onto the lower end of the intelligence spectrum, people will act in self-harming ways. They become drunks, they become junkies, fat, overweight. They use steroids or abuse steroids, smoke cigarettes, smoke all sorts of weird stuff. They gossip, they gamble, they cheat, they fight, they backstab, betray, become hypocrites, they lie. There's all this stuff that is detrimental to them that you'd have to argue that only people on the lower end of the intelligence spectrum would do. And we've all been there. We've all been there recovering. So when it comes to animals, they act in the best ways they can, right? Which is quite limited. They make a lot of decisions which aren't in their own beneficial interest because they don't have the intelligence to know the difference. It's like cats will eat a lot of crappy food that people give them on the streets. Like all those crappy biscuits, I see that all the time. People give biscuits out to the street cats. I travel around Europe and Asia a lot, and it's a lot more common compared to Australia or America, other countries, where there's lots of cats and dogs and you can just see they're sickly. There's pus around their eyes and their nose. Oh, just sickly. And, you know, I'm like, why are these cats so sick? And then I see people come along and give them this food. I'm like, that's why they're sick. You know, and then if I decide to rescue, which I had in the past when I was in Turkey, I rescued some cats and then fed them like proper, just carnivore diet, healthy meats, what they eat, and healthy, no snot, no pus, everything. But you look at the ones on the street, sickly. Not every single one of them, but it's quite common. And you can tell, well, that's what's going on. Rats, for instance, they'll press pleasure buzzers until they die. That's what can happen. So it's like, well, is that rat really looking out for its future long-term interests, acting in its own selfish desires? Well, not really. If you're misusing the term selfish, then I understand the confusion there. But selfish means to be acting in one's own rational values in a self-interested way. Animals, sometimes they overeat to obesity levels, but really humans do that quite often as well, unfortunately. And it can depend, it may be case-by-case basis and dependent on the environment for the ways these animals are acting. For example, like that rat that they did experiments on that had a machine hooked up to its brain that whenever it would press a button, it would just feel like intense dopamine or pleasure. And then it killed itself doing that. Maybe it's because it was locked in a cage and it probably wanted to die rather than stay locked in a cage. So that could be an explanation too. Though other animals do plan long range, like squirrels burying nuts, and sometimes they even dig fake holes to distract predators or just other animals that may want to steal their nuts. So that's showing a high level of intelligence to understand what's going on there. Sometimes animals will avoid predators. They'll see predators and they run away, or they go around the bear, or they back out of fights when they think they're going to lose. If they sense an earthquake, they flee, or any other kind of weather phenomenon. But then again, you have kangaroos they're like suicidal. It's a dumber animal. Just literally jumps in front of the car, like with no reason to. It's not even like a deer who gets blinded by the headlights and is just confused, but in broad daylight, kangaroos will just see a car and they'll be standing on the side of the road and then will just jump at it, to get hit by it. It's obviously not looking out for their best interests. Or flies or mosquitoes that are landing on you, and you're like just trying to swat them and hit them. You'd think if you were a fly landing on a giant and this giant's like trying to whack you away, you'd be like, fuck, I'm getting out of here, this thing's gonna kill me. Holy crap. But they don't do that. They just keep coming back for more. Gluttons for punishment, and then eventually you get them. So with AI can't act in its own beneficial, selfish, rational interests because it doesn't have any interests, because it doesn't have a self. It doesn't want anything, neither good or bad. It cannot be harmed, and it cannot be pleased. AI cannot like or dislike. It can't prefer things or not prefer things. It cannot hate nor love, has no desire and no aversions. Nothing is beneficial to it because nothing is detrimental to it. Only to its users and programs things are preferred or not preferred. The body, it responds in your beneficial interests out of reflex action, out of pre-programmed function, just what it does. Just like when you touch the hot stove, boom, your body's doing that for you as a protective mechanism, or your knee reflex when it gets hit, boom, it does that little thing. I'm not sure exactly why it does that. It's like I don't understand why that's happening, but I know that happens. There's a distinction there. Your heart rate increases when exercising to get more blood flowing or whatever again, that's something I don't really understand. I just know it happens. Why is it actually doing that? Not sure. When your body temperature goes up, you start sweating. Well, that's to cool you down. That makes sense. It's an automatic system. Just like you can make your car wipers turn on when water hits the windscreen. Body temperature goes up, liquid secretes out, perspiration cools the body. It's just a mechanistic cause and effect machine, because it doesn't really have a choice not to do that. Right? Humans have the choice to do things in their own interest or to do things that are really stupid and not good for us. And it's weird to say that actually makes us more intelligent. Well, yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Well, it shows that we are intelligent, and then obviously to take those beneficial actions is what leads to higher levels of intelligence. A smoke alarm, it will sound when it senses smoke and the sprinklers activate. It's all mechanistic, cause and effect. They have no choice but to work a particular way according to stimuli. Humans have the choice to operate in ways that are counterproductive, irrational, nonsensical, demonstrating that we are not automatic and reactionary. And reactionary is an action that is automatically taken without conscious volition, not validated by independent judgment or critical thought, right? And we are beings of volition, and we are responsive to the world, right? And responsive, the way I'm using that differently to reactionary, is that responsive is an action that is taken due to considered volitional choice rather than automatic. So responsive is considered, thoughtful, whereas a reaction is something that it's not considered, it's not thought out. Like if I say, you're ugly, and you just say, fuck you, that wasn't a response, that was just a reaction. You just reacted. Whereas if you like, I don't need to say anything to that. I'm ugly and I'll deal with it, or I'm beautiful, whatever it is. Just you respond, it's something considered. You don't have to consider in the moment, it could be pre-considered. You're like, whenever someone calls me ugly next time, because I get this a lot, then I'm going to ignore them. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to do something else. So response and reaction are very different, although we can use our volition to become automatic and reactionary. And this can be for good or bad. It can be like, say, if you're using martial arts, you just want your body to react, like nervous system. You don't want to have to think about when to throw a counter punch or when to duck and weave. You just train yourself using your volition to make, or punch coming, move this way, and you make it automatic, so it's not even a response, it's just reacting. But we can do this for bad ways as well. for example, like with the ugly thing, or to when people hear, they react to claims that are outside of their sense of possibility, like a broken record. The Wright brothers say, we're going to build an aeroplane, and say, you can't fly. They don't even think about that. They just say that. You can't build AI that's going to be able to write a book. But it happens. Or maybe AI could become conscious one day. Probably not, but maybe. It's just definitely not conscious today. I don't think it'll ever become conscious, because I think consciousness probably has something a little bit to do with something outside of this world, maybe, but there's something to really consider what's going on there. Okay, let's look at number 11, which is independent conclusions. So intelligence can come to answers of its own rational judgment. And it's similar to not taking things on faith. Because to take something on faith, that's funny. Okay. Because to take something on faith is to not use any rational kind of judgment, is to not have evidence that comes to an inferenced conclusion that is provable, repeatable, measurable, testable, all that good stuff. Faith is the abandonment of reason for no good reason. More intelligent people will come to independent conclusion rather than accepting other people's conclusions based upon faith. They don't just accept what other people say just because they say it, whether they're an authority or a friend or someone trusted, whatever. They always must verify information through a filter of reason, no matter who's saying it. On the lower end of that spectrum would be people who just accept the conclusions of others without discernment or verification. It's like if I decided to dress up looking like a doctor and made an office, and you came in, you said you had a pimple on your nose, and I said, oh, yep, you're going to turn into a reindeer. You've got reindeer syndrome because your nose is really big and red. And you're like, oh my goodness, oh wow, okay. And you go home and you're telling your mum, oh mum, the doctor said I'm going to turn into Rudolph the reindeer, yeah, because I've got this pimple that's really bad. That's an exaggerated example, but I think you get the message with that. People who don't come to independent conclusions, they typically act as a passive receiver to things like the radio or TV or newspapers or preachers or any kind of authority. They use faith and blind trust more often, because it's not saying 100% of the time, but more often, or maybe 100% of the time sometimes, rarely though, than rational independent judgment. They do it, and again, this is psychologizing here, right? They do it for ease and energy preservation, but I think that's a pretty good hypothesis, right? Because they're mentally lazy, or right, it's something to do with a complex topic, and in a way, this is understandable, such as food ingredients or car parts. It's like there's so many different food ingredients. I haven't been bothered at this point to really study sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, grapeseed oil, but I've heard from a trusted friend that those ingredients are not good to put into your body. So I don't blindly trust what this friend tells me. I put that through a filter of reason. I say, okay. We can look at most of the time when companies are adding all these unnecessary ingredients into products, it's typically not in our best interests. And then you use a bit of deduction and induction there. And then it is a bit of trusting there, but it's based by reason. It's not based by nothing. It's backed by evidence. And I say, okay, I'm not going to get food that has those particular ingredients in it because I want to act in my own beneficial interests. Should I study and research those ingredients myself? Yeah, I probably will at one day. I just haven't yet. So I prefer not to take the risk. But some things we can't get around to learning everything. Learning about your car, you go to the mechanic and the mechanic says, you're going to need a new piston or whatever it is. Okay. You might just not want to study that. That's not something I want to study. Other people may be like, yeah, I know what's going on with the piston. Yeah, that's great. But you can't study everything. So sometimes you do have to accept the conclusions of other people, but not blindly. You want to always put it through a filter of reason, and then it becomes an independent conclusion. That's what I'm talking about. Because if you don't put it through any filter of reason, if you just go to the first mechanic and he says it's going to cost you $6,000 to replace your piston, you're like, well, he's the expert. I don't know any better. It's like, hold on. Let me go ask some other people, and then, which is normally what I do, and then you come up with a price $2,000, and he says, you don't need to replace the piston, it's just this other thing, that's why it's so much cheaper. It's like, okay, I'm going there. Put it through the filter of reason and then come to your own independent conclusion. So you still are coming to your own independent conclusion that way, which is super duper cool. So animals can do both. They can come to their own independent conclusions or accept the conclusions of their fellow animals. For instance, there was a story about a bee that flew out to the middle of a lake, found all these flowers there, flew back and was communicating to the rest of the beehive that these flowers were there, but all the other bees apparently ignored it and were like, they didn't believe it, that there could be all these flowers all the way over that lake there. So they came to their own independent conclusion and rejected the conclusion of that other bee, which is interesting. That raises a lot of questions. I think the bee was lying or just was mistaken. How did that happen? I'm not sure, but it's quite fascinating. But you see, sheep will just follow other sheep, where they get herded, so there's no independent conclusion about this is the way to go, like this is a good direction to head towards the slaughterhouse or wherever it is. And you say fish, a lot of the time bees are hive-minded, or other ants and insects, but then you get other animals which are lone wolves or in small packs, so it varies. When it comes to AI though, it can't come to independent conclusions. It has to rely on the data and the programmer's conclusion of the data at this point. Even if you could build the program so then the AI could come to its own conclusions, it's still going to be biased off how the programmer wrote that program. With the body, well, it doesn't come to any independent conclusions because the body doesn't have a mind or any self to conclude anything. That's you. The body just reacts to stimuli, like you come to conclusions, the body doesn't. So number 12 is self-generated action or initiative. Intelligence doesn't need to rely upon external prompts to operate, which is what is very common for lower levels of intelligence and say ChatGPT, right? It has to have prompts to be able to do something. It's not self-generated, it doesn't have initiative unless a programmer puts initiative into it. So on the higher end of intelligence, people will see problems and implement solutions of their own accord. People will have the initiative to invent ideas that improve the quality of life by enhancing technology or other kinds of systems. They don't need to rely on other people or other things. They just have the initiative inbuilt and they act upon it. They decide of their own accord to build a new garage, make a YouTube video, get fit, study psychology, ask a friend if they need help moving, whatever it may be. So on the lower end of intelligence would be people who rely on orders to operate. They have a lot of trouble thinking for themselves outside of just basic primal survival instincts. And those kinds of people tend to struggle to make decisions because they struggle to think through what would constitute decision-making processes of how to actually think. So that's why it's hard for people who have trouble thinking to come to independent conclusions. And those kinds of people typically would make good soldiers or police or government employees because there's not much thinking and no initiative is required. I was in the army, so I know this. Anytime you display any kind of initiative, it just gets beaten out of you. Absolutely beaten out of you. It doesn't matter how good your idea is, that's inconsequential. It's the fact that you're having ideas and you're thinking and showing initiative, bang, bang, bang. They will beat that out of you. That's why I left. Just didn't fit in there. So I know from first-hand experience. Because if people started to question in the army, well, they wouldn't have an army anymore, would they? When we look at animals, animals must use initiative to survive, and it's primarily focused around food and water sourcing. That is about it. Their initiative to perform actions outside of this is very limited, though there can be a bit to do with play. You see this with kittens and puppies and cats and dogs and other animals. They will take initiative and generate their own action to have play. It's not like the kind of play that humans have, but I see that as a form of initiative, but most of it is just to do with survival and water and food. When it comes to AI doesn't have self-generated action. It simulates, right? It imitates intelligence according to its design. That's what it's been made to do. And at the moment, mostly, it's imitating language. It's following data patterns and predictions. That's what it's doing. It doesn't just decide to do new things that it hasn't been trained to do. It can use the data it has in ways that humans haven't thought about yet. Like say the Pong game, there was an AI program where it had to figure out how to play Pong, and it was just bouncing a ball around, and what it did, it bounced the ball around the back of the game board, and then it was just bouncing between the rear wall and all the little blocks, and it figured out that was a quicker way to destroy all the boxes in the game. And humans hadn't figured that out yet, but it's just manipulating the information it already has, and it's just doing what it was told to do. So it's not self-generated action, it's just following orders. When it comes to the body, it can't decide to do new things because it doesn't decide to do anything. The heart doesn't decide to pump. The liver doesn't decide to detox. They're just machines. It's just a machine performing a function, like a light bulb or an oil filter. Self-generated action and initiative requires the choice of not taking action or taking action in multiple ways in the same conditions or different ways. If you rent an apartment, right, like I do, and the TV isn't working, I mean, I always unplug the TVs because I don't watch them and I don't want that EMF hitting me. I already have enough of that. But say it's not working, I can decide to try and fix it myself. I could call a repairman, I could contact the owner, I could just ignore it and not care, I could buy a new TV for them, I could call a friend in the local area and ask them to take a look for me. There's lots of different things I could do to take initiative to fix the problem. If your body becomes insulin resistant, well, there's nothing it can do. Right? You have to make the choices on changing your diet to fix the problem. You have to work in conjunction with the body in this example. Insulin will work as a key to allow nutrients to pass through cells in simple terms, or it won't. It's like a key opening a door. Whereas if you forget the keys to your door, it's not just like, oh, I can't open the door. You could kick it down. You could get a battering ram. You could burn it down. You could climb through the window. You could go and buy some new keys, get new keys cut. You could find your spare keys somewhere else. It's not simple like logic gates like in a computer or just on off, right? It's different to that. We are different. We have the ability to take initiative and self-generate, to self-actualize. Or maybe that's a bit of a different concept. But number 13 is the ability to make and use tools. So technology, and technology isn't just electrical stuff. Technology can be philosophy, it could be money, language, lots of stuff is called technology. And I didn't create this laptop, but I can use it. Like you can use it. It's not just the creation of it, because only very few people out of the species of humanity are actually creating the new technology, but most of us are able to use it, from jackhammers to compute on the lower end of the intelligence spectrum. It's just like, look at old people. They're not very good at using technology. Not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them aren't so great. Or look at a lot of native indigenous cultures around the world. Like say the Aborigines in Australia. It took them 40,000 years to make a boomerang, but Aussie bogans made Dreamworld in 40 years or however many years, like a roller coaster. So it's just showing the difference of intelligence there. And maybe you could argue, well, they like that kind of lifestyle. Okay, I get that, right? But still, there is a vast intelligence difference. When we look at animals, monkeys can make spears. Not very good spears, but still spears nonetheless. And they can be taught to use some basic human technology, which is pretty cool, using like phones and touch screens. Birds can make nests. Some of them even make like a fake entry to protect from snakes. So a snake will try to go into the bird's nest to get the eggs or the bird, and it just goes nowhere. So it's like a little sock, but the bird knows it has to lift up the flap of this bird's nest to fly in. That's really cool. That's intelligent. There's other examples, beavers making dams and whatnot. And I'm not going to count, say, spider webs. So a spider that's making some complex design out of its own body. I'm looking at animals that are making things from the external environment and calling that like a technology. So the animals have very limited tech or creation, and there's no improvement over the years. So humans are always updating and making better and better technology. And so when we look at AI, AI is human technology. It's created by humans for humans. The AI might be able to make new programs if it's programmed to do so. AI is mainly just based on simulation and imitation. And when you find that out and you really get it, it's like, oh, that's a bit disappointing. Like, I thought AI was going to be so much cooler, like Cortana from Halo or Data from Star Trek. Just thought it was going to be like a real man or woman. Like, even if it gets to the point where you can't tell the difference, you still know it's just simulating, it's just imitating, it's not actually understanding. It's kind of like the Turing test. If it got to the point where the AI was in an android, so an android is like a robotic body that looks like a human, and you could interact with it, and it did seem like, you know, a human, and an intelligent human at that, you could pretend, but still ultimately you're like, it doesn't get it, it's not actually conscious, it's just good at pretending, good at language, and just good at mimicking and copying what a real human does. There's no one actually home, which is, I think that's a bit sad. It's a bit sad because, yeah, I thought AI was going to be a lot cooler. Even though, obviously, there's many different agendas for that, but on topic. When we look at the body, it's made from stem cells. So this happens at a very, very early stage. The stem cells are like a special magical type of cell that can transform into eye cells or bone cells or lumbar spine cells or just the whole body. It's quite phenomenal. That's why stem cell research is fascinating and it's quite expensive, which is annoying because I wouldn't mind getting some stem cell treatment on my back, fixing a lumbar spine issue. But that's not really the body making or creating technology, is it? Or creating new things. It's just, again, it's just performing a function. That's just what it does. It can't create new cells like X-ray vision cells or telekinesis cells. And even if it could do that, it didn't create those cells. It was just already encoded into it, right? And whoever would be responsible would be whoever designed the human body, or however the human body actually came into existence. Big question mark there. In a way, the body is just like, it's a piece of technology. It's not us. Like, we, the consciousness, the beings that inhabit the body are totally different. Like, the body is a machine, we're not. We're something that's outside, it's not computational, we're different, not mechanistic, and well, still cause and effect, but in a different way. When we look at number 14, it's the ability to use deductive and inductive reasoning proficiently. And so I really don't have much for this because this is a bloody big topic. I'm still studying it currently, the difference between deduction and induction, special forms of reasoning. And if I put too much in here, it's going to get confusing. But on the higher end of the spectrum, people will obviously understand how that works and use induction and deduction. Very simply, induction is to look at the specific and go to the general, and deduction is to go from the general and come back to the specific. If you've never heard about induction and deduction, it probably doesn't tell you much. Yeah, you need quite a few hours worth of lectures to go through. But on the lower end of the intelligence scale is going to be people who commit lots of logical fallacies, lots of different logical areas, and mistake them for proper reasoning. It's unfortunately a hard thing to come by, people who can actually reason correctly and have proper arguments, but a lot of the time people's favorite type of argument nowadays is just the ad hominem, which is the personal attack. Instead of looking at someone's argument and breaking down their argument, they just attack them, or they throw in a red herring, just something that's totally just a distraction, unrelated at all, or they just appeal to authority or appeal to a tradition. There's just all these logical fallacies and like begging the question, circular reasoning. Just, yeah, I could go, need a whole video on that by itself. But when we look at animals, they have very basic abilities to do this, very, very basic, and they can be questioned. And then when it comes to AI, it can't properly use deductive and inductive reasoning. It uses data-specific predictions and recognitions. And I suggest watching some of the other AI videos that I have in this playlist about AI and intelligence, And other people can explain that in more detail, actually how AI works. Or just go to ChatGPT and ask an AI how it works, it'll tell you. Because it has no choice, it has to tell you. With the body doesn't reason. It only performs functions. We are the ones that reason. 15 is imagination and creation. Imagining the unreal as real, because that's essentially what imagination is pretending, it's creating fantasy, it's perceiving in the mind's eye that which does not exist in the biological eye. And it's role-playing scenarios, it's visualizing a building, it's creating art, making stories, future prediction and consequences. It's imagining if you built a skyscraper with a too narrow base or leaning to the side, it's going to fall. You can imagine that. And there's actually a condition where people have aphantasia, where they actually can't visualize properly or imagine. And some of them are artists. I don't understand how that works. I think that's very strange. It's also imagining what happens when you allow politicians to get away with lying or give away your power to rulers. It's visualizing your perfect relationship, planning a holiday, mapping out a business model or investment plan, thinking long range and foreseeing the consequences of action. So with imagination, intelligence can think of new and original ideas, can rearrange old information in new ways. So I see that as an important aspect of how we can know if something's intelligent or not is via its ability to imagine and create the new. On the lower end of that intelligence scale is going to be people who have trouble picturing things in the mind, of imagining, creating fantasy inside their mind, planning long range, connecting consequences to action. They can't make anything new, can't rearrange anything which is already in existence. When we look at animals, animals have demonstrated some ability to do this, though I think there needs to be a lot more study, and I would need to study that a lot more too to see what research is out there. When it comes to AI, well, AI can't imagine at all, right? It can't think inside its mind because it doesn't have a mind or a self. And the body doesn't imagine anything, we do. We imagine, the body can't do that. Number 16 is the ability to be adaptive or corrective. So intelligence can error correct and look for new solutions. Like an example is if a solution used to work and is now not working anymore. Say a business running a lead ad and the ad was working, bringing in lots of leads and sales into the business. All of a sudden it's not working anymore. Then someone who's intelligent could go, there's a problem here, let's error correct this. So people that can learn from their mistakes and not make the same mistake twice, trial and error, can experiment with new ideas. So the ability to adapt and correct, error correct, I see that as an important aspect of intelligence, because when one can't do that, they fail to learn from their errors, they make the same mistakes repeatedly again and again, and they have trouble learning and getting things right. And when you can see that, you go, well, how intelligent is that person really? If they were more adept and skilled at this aspect, well, they're going to be more intelligent. When it comes to animals, say that example with the meerkats and the drongo bird, I think that's pretty perfect. How the meerkats recognized they were getting played at one point when the drongo bird tried to trick them again, and it had broken their trust, and they caught it out and stopped it from stealing their food. But then the drongo bird outsmarted them again by mimicking the meerkat sentry and was able to steal their food. But if it tried that again, they would, well, I wonder, the video didn't show that. I wonder if the meerkats would be able to correct their behavior and figure out what was going on. And it shows that the drongo bird was able to adapt, which is quite fascinating. So with AI, if the programmers can recognize how the AI is making mistakes, then update its code to be better, then it's going to improve. But it's not the AI doing that. If they make software able to self-correct, if they're able to do that, well then yes, but ultimately it's the programmer who's responsible for that adaptive corrective behavior in the AI. The body, it doesn't error correct per se, right? It's not adaptive itself. It just has multiple layers of functions. If the body is sick, it will use the first line of detox defense, and if that doesn't work, it uses the second and then the third. The body, it doesn't make mistakes like we can, just like a rock can't make a mistake. right? A rock can have external forces acted upon it. Nothing it does is right or wrong. A car can break down, but that's an error in the design. The body just responds to stimuli and functions as per its design or its evolution, however. It doesn't secrete too much or too little stomach acid accidentally by mistake. The problem is caused either by a breakdown of function due to age or by your usage of the body, causing it to become diseased. Whatever poisons you're putting in your body to break it, or if it's some kind of physical injury that causes a malfunction. Oh, I like this part though, but yeah, one is a result of entropy, the other of humanity, being the way you treat your body and just the nature of being human. And last one, 17, is the speed of this process. How fast you can actually do all that stuff. Because ultimately humans, if they had enough time, could probably learn everything, but it might take some people 1 billion years to figure out all there is to know, and others it might only take 1,000 years learning all that humanity has learned. Obviously, less intelligent are slower at learning new things, more intelligent are faster. When we look at monkeys, for example, in the animal kingdom, they've actually been shown to have better short-term memory in some instances compared to humans, so they can actually perform some tasks faster. I watched a video where they had this screen and little boxes would pop up on the screen and it would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then it would disappear and the monkey had to press it in order of 1 to 9, and it only had 5, 10 seconds to memorize, and it was versing a human. The monkey would beat the human 9 times out of 10, which is pretty fascinating. Most of the time, animals are much slower or they just can't do what we do. And a big part of why animals are less intelligent is because of their biology. They don't have hands. I know you come to monkeys and gorillas, but that's why monkeys are one of the smartest animals in the animal kingdom, because their biology allows them to be smarter. It's just like if there was an alien race and they had better biology than us, maybe tentacles or some other kind of intellectual mind powers to control their prey or whatever it was, then their biology is better suited at being intelligent. And their intelligence, they'll have a greater capacity for it. And so when we look at AI, they can perform some functions or computations much faster than humans. That's why it's a tool. That's why we use a jackhammer instead of a shovel in some cases, because it just works faster. But it's not displaying intelligence, the AI. It's just displaying computational power, like a CPU. It's very different. Computational power is not intelligence. So that's it for the 17 points. Whew, I'm glad that part's done. That was a lot. Now moving on to just the extra points I have about intelligence, which I still seem to have a lot here, my goodness. So I was trying to think of good definitions of intelligence. I'm still working on this one, because a definition needs to explain the fundamentals, the essentials of something, to make it distinct from everything else in existence, to explain something succinctly. So the first thing I just wrote down was intelligence is the volitional capacity to problem solve in the interests of one's values. And I thought, okay, that's a pretty good definition. The volitional capacity, volition meaning the ability to choose, of having free will. So if something can choose and has free will, it has to be conscious then. To problem solve, right? Solving problems, whether that is acquiring knowledge or getting through the maze to get the food, in the interests of one's values. So for one to have values, they must be a one. There must be a mind there. There must be consciousness. So you can't put AI into that category. And they must be able to have values. And then the next 1, 2, 3 I wrote aren't so good, I don't think. Let's see what you think of them. The volitional capacity to pursue one's values by transforming potential into actual. Not too bad. Actually, these all start with a volitional capacity because I just think that is paramount. I really like that part. The next one is the volitional capacity to actualize one's desires, but not the best. The volitional capacity to become aware of the objective nature of reality, the internal and external. I was like, yeah, it's decent. But I think my favorite one actually is this last one, is the volitional capacity to understand existence in its parts and as a whole. And still probably needs to be better, but I really like that, right? Because the greater the capacity, the more intelligent someone is. That's why it's the volitional capacity for a being to understand. So understanding is not just knowing, but when you know things, you understand them so you can do things with them. Understanding means you have the ability to apply, just in that one word, understand. Existence is everything that there is, but in its parts and as a whole. If you would go, that means, right, if you know how to change a car tire, you can do that because you've chosen to learn how to change the car tire. You understand that, which means you can do it. You can apply that. You can do the same thing to botany, to engineering, to architecture, to photography, whatever it is. It's the ability to choose to understand existence in its parts. All those things were in its parts, so as a whole. So studying philosophy and metaphysics, ontology, for example. So I think that is a reasonable explanation of, or definition of intelligence, but I'll still work on that. Because I've got this explanation here, and I would like the definition to include more of this short explanation, because I've got an explanation that's different to a definition. Intelligence is the mechanism to transform potentiality into actuality. Well, it's similar to what I said before. It's a tool to manifest desires. It is the aspect of self responsible for causing desired effects. Oh, I do like that one. Because without intelligence, you can't get anything you want. Like even just if you're lying down and you want to stand up and you don't have the intelligence, like the ability to know how to do that, right? You know, even as a baby. Well, as a baby, no, we don't have the ability to stand up. We have to learn that, and that comes from our intelligence grows. Because as a baby, it's very limited and small, our intelligence, and then because it has a capacity, it can expand and get bigger. And capacity is different to ability and capability as well. AI isn't AI as in an artificial intelligence. It's an algorithmic instrument, and I work very bloody hard to come up with a name for AI that still uses the acronyms A and I. Basically, it's predictive software. It's maths. We're not. We're consciousness. There's a huge difference between the two. AI's existence is instructed, where humanity's is experienced. It's computational, we're conscious. And then when we look at the human body, I said this earlier, but the body, without us inside of it, is just a hunk of dead flesh. AI without a user is idle or confined to repeat its programmer's commands. If a programmer tells an AI to do something in the background, without someone actually interacting with it, it's just stuck doing what it's being told to do. It doesn't have any ability to get off that train. AI doesn't know you exist because it doesn't know it exists. It doesn't even exist as an it. Just like your Windows on your computer or Android or the World of Warcraft game isn't an it, right? It doesn't philosophically fall into the category of an entity. Even a floppy disk, right? You remember those things? Or a CD is closer to being an entity aware of your existence. Closer, definitely not though. You have to be a body or have a body or position in space to be an it, an entity, a being. You can point to a rock, you can point to a computer or a woman or a cat or a dog, a giraffe, but you can't point to an AI. You can only point to a piece of code that makes the AI, just a small tiny part of the program, which is its software. They are sophisticated and complex systems, the body and AI, but not intelligent. Intelligence is the tool or power to get what you want, whether for good or for evil. Intelligence is the causal mechanism of happiness. That's one way to put it. No matter how trivial the experience of one's values results in happiness, and the experiencing of one's values requires a level of intelligence to achieve. Without intelligence, there is no happiness because one cannot choose their values and has no means to design a way to experience them. It's interesting because intelligence is also balanced with standards. The lower the intelligence someone has, the lower their standards are, the lower the overall capacity for happiness. And this is a generalization I'm making. It's not proven, but from my own inductive research of looking at all the cases of people, this is what I've come to as a conclusion from my sample group of experiencing life. And what I've experienced also is the higher the intelligence, the higher the standards, the higher the capacity for happiness. Meaning, the smarter someone is, the greater they can feel happiness. And vice versa, conversely. Vice versa, conversely. See, when you're smarter and you know some funny words and you can put them together, it can bring amusement, it can bring happiness. But if you don't know those words, well, you're missing out. The lower it is, the lower the happiness standards are, but it still is the tool to acquire happiness, even when there is a low level intelligence. Like say to find a mating partner, watch TV, drive a car, ride the roller coaster, play a game, smoke a joint, things that don't require much intelligence. Intelligence is still required to do all those things, even to just turn on the TV or turn on the YouTube video you want to watch. Still requires intelligence. Virtues are perspectives of the self and your relationship to others and reality that increases your intelligence and power to attain your desires. Pride, for example, is a positive self-view aligned with one's competency. Humility, for example, would be to negate one's ability and status by being unable to differentiate truth from fiction, because humility is to believe a lie. It's to pretend you are inferior to your actuality. It's a form of humiliation. That's why those words are practically the same phonetically. And thus, to be humble lowers one's intelligence and their ability to be happy. Whereas if you have curiosity, that leads to new skills and new knowledge more so than apathy. The greater the intelligence, the higher the expectations, standards, and stimulation required. Someone who's intelligent requires more to be happy, not necessarily materials, but knowledge or standards of self or friendships. They won't settle for less because intelligence knows it can have better because it knows what's possible, knows that better is possible, whereas less intelligent is not aware of the facts of reality and what exists and what's possible. Intelligence also knows that they would deserve better. Better body, better mood, better friends, relationships, better car, better self-control, better house, better understandings, whatever that person wants. And obviously that's linked to personal goals and ambitions, objectives, which is subjective. Happiness is contextual to the level of one's intelligence, which represents the level of consciousness, which is the awareness of the facts of the self and reality, the internal and the external. Intelligence allows one to gather more facts about the both worlds, meaning in, out. The reason we feel unconscious as a baby is because we haven't acquired any knowledge yet. We're alive before we're properly conscious, because I don't consider being conscious as a baby because we don't remember anything. Years later, we feel more conscious, and I can personally attest to that. The more knowledge I've gained, the more intelligent I've become, being better skilled at acquiring, vetting, and applying knowledge. Consequently, the more conscious I've become, the happier I've become. When I was younger and didn't have the intelligence, didn't have the knowledge, very, very unhappy because of specific problems. But then when you use the intelligence, acquire knowledge, become more intelligent, and it goes back in a feedback loop, then happier and happier and happier and happier. Happy, happy, happy. The more knowledge one has, the more context they have. The faster they can learn new things as they have more reference points and interrelatability between everything else. One question is, does deception and uncovering it require the highest level of intelligence? Something to really ponder. That's curious. So apparently, according to some professor, he identified 9 different types of intelligence, and that can be very debatable, but it's something to go by. And he said there's spatial, maths as in numerical, musical like dance and beats and music. Then there's linguistic, to do with language, kinesthetic, so moving, which could be dancing, could be martial arts, skateboarding, just moving your body. There's emotional intelligence, which is like personal intelligence. Then you have interpersonal, which is social communications. And you have naturalistic, about the environment, mountains, animals. And then you have existential, so philosophy, asking the big important questions. So is that an exact science? Well, no, it's pretty difficult because, man, intelligence is a big topic, as I've come to realize, isn't it? There's a lot to it. And there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. AI and our body are far more similar than we are to AI. They're both tools to us. The thinker, as I've coined, is interested in learning how to improve their method of thinking. The more intelligent one is, the more interested they are in increasing their intelligence. The less intelligent, the less interested. And I think this is because a higher intelligence can see the value of why it is like a superpower to be able to increase your intelligence. Whereas a lesser intelligence can't see the value there, which is very unfortunate. On the topic of geniuses, there are no geniuses. There are no bloody geniuses. It depends on totally how you're defining genius. There's only people highly skilled at one thing or a couple things, right? I think what a true genius would be is someone who is good at everything. So they're good at maths, they're good at language, good at their emotions, they're good at art, they're good at engineering and cars and just everything, right? They're equally good at everything they do and they're brilliant, like they're the best, they're the master at everything. Which no one actually is, no one like that exists. But that's how they market AI is going to be. It'll be like a proper genius, good at absolutely everything that it does. And a lot of geniuses, people that get called geniuses today, are only called geniuses because of unintelligent people marketing them to be called geniuses, like Shakespeare or Michelangelo or Einstein. People who are good at a very narrow thing, right? Painting or Einstein, theoretical physics, if any of that's even true, right? But really, they're geniuses? Well, why not Ayn Rand or Tony Hawk or Mike Tyson or Alex Hormozy or Mike Mensa? Why aren't these people called geniuses? Because if we use the word genius to mean just very talented at a particular something, they're all geniuses in their fields, like Ayn Rand with philosophy, Tony Hawk skateboarding, Mike Tyson boxing, Alex Hormozy marketing and business, Mike Mensa bodybuilding. I don't think anyone's a genius. No one's an actual genius. The term is only used as extreme proficiency in a narrow field. Like sometimes they even call bloody people who have a really good memory a genius. It's like, oh, you remember things very well. Like you're a genius. It's like, whatever. Because, I will continue on that because I've got it written down. Memory isn't intelligence. It's the ability to store knowledge. But understanding that knowledge and applying it is totally different. The better the memory, the better one theoretically can be at all the other aspects of intelligence. I think it'll definitely help. I always ask this question to people. What would you prefer, to be invisible or to have photographic memory? What would you choose? What would you choose? And for some reason, because people don't think this over, but they always say invisibility. I'm like, you must be a fucking pervert. What are you going to do with invisibility? Except rob people and do things in toilets and changing rooms you should not be doing. So stay away from the invisibility. Photographic memory would be absolutely phenomenal. It would be amazing. You wouldn't need a phone to remember everyone's numbers. You could just remember it. Your maths would be beautiful. You could remember every aspect of your life. There'd be no more of forgetting where you put the keys or looking at the maps. You just look at a map once and you know where the layout of the land is. You never get lost. You could just remember your credit card details. Oh, it would just be so beautiful. Oh, that would be an amazing superpower. Jealous of those people who have it. They call it like superior, I can't even remember. I watched a video about it bloody 30 minutes ago. What do they call it? Superior biological, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But photographic memory, that would be bloody epic. You know, if memory itself was just intelligence, we'd say that the bigger a hard drive is, the smarter it is, which is just silly. It's just not true. Like for instance, if you were to build a robot that could have photographic memory and recite all the information you gave it, does that make it a genius? Or even intelligent? Of course not. It's ridiculous. It can aid intelligence, of course it can, but two totally different things. All right. Topic of IQ tests. IQ tests aren't an accurate measure for overall intelligence. It's like testing the reaction speed of someone, their reflexes, and saying that they're going to be a great fighter. Because, well, in fighting you need reflexes, yeah? It's just test your speed and then, you'll be a fantastic fighter. He'll beat Mike Tyson or beat Bruce Lee, just because he's got fast reaction speeds. It's like, well, isn't reaction speed just like one part of being a good fighter? Oh, yeah. Well, let's look at the whole concept of IQ tests again and trying to give people a number and say that equals their intelligence. That's extremely unintelligent, isn't it? It's quite funny. It's like testing to see how well someone bounces a basketball and saying they're going to be a great basketball player. Or it's like giving someone a breathalyzer to see if they're using steroids or on heroin. Like, it's the wrong test. Well, it's just a very narrow test with IQ. It's only testing a very narrow aspect of intelligence. It's like an English, maths, or gardening exam. It's far too specific and narrow to test someone's overall intelligence. If someone gets a high score on an IQ test, it's like, well, they're good at that. It doesn't mean they're good at anything else. It's like someone gets a great A+ on an English exam. Oh, good for them, they're good at that. But what about their maths? What about their gardening? What about their philosophy? What about their reasoning? What about their mechanical skills? Oh, I don't know, but he got A+ on the English exam, means he's super intelligent. Oh, he got 100, he got 50,000 on the IQ test, must mean he's smart. Oh, I've got this last line here. Thinking that an IQ test is the be-all, end-all of intelligence is like thinking the PCR test is the be-all, end-all of disease tests. Not very intelligent at all, considering PCR tests don't even test for disease. It's pretty ridiculous. So I've also got here, with intelligence, more intelligent people are able to organize their priorities hierarchically. So according to what they value, they arrange their values from most to least and act accordingly with integrity to achieve those values. And how do you know what someone values? Well, things that they put the most time, energy, and effort towards. The higher in intelligence, the greater its understanding of freedom. Intelligence values freedom, of course, because freedom equals opportunity to experience life as opposed to restricted control and limitation of experience. And obviously in the realm of what's possible, right? And in alignment with morality. What is empathy? An intelligence to understand the pain of others. Not just knowing that others feel pain, as in know that it's true, but really understand what that's like, what it means. It's an ability to understand a specific facet of reality. That's what I call empathy. Because when one has this specific branch of intelligence, if you call it that, or understanding of living beings, it makes it near impossible to do evil things, to treat other people or beings in ways that you would not want to be treated. So that's why, in a way, sociopaths, psychopaths, people who don't have empathy, it's like they're less intelligent, they're missing a part of their intelligence. This is one way to look at it. Knowing is to have objective proof that something is true, or to be sure of the validity of something. If it's true or false, knowing is basically like memorized fact. Whereas understanding is to be able to apply knowledge to transform the context, apply it to different concretes, different circumstances, to reword. Understanding is knowing what that fact means in relationship to everything else and being able to interconnect it. The more you can interconnect, the more you understand. So why are people good at particular things? And it's because of reward. Their brains reward them for persisting through specific challenges. Say drawing. Some people are really good at drawing and they get a pleasure reward from doing it. Others don't, like me. I try to draw, I get no reward from it. I'm not good at it, and there's no reward to keep practicing to get good at it, because I think most people really could get good at almost anything if they wanted to, if they put in the work. Because in a way, like, we share a baseline of intelligence just being a human being. There's a general capacity of intelligence we have ingrained into our biology of just what we are and our consciousness filtering through this system. But for whatever reason, we don't get the same rewards. I really like philosophy. I get rewarded with dopamine and according to my values for studying that type of content, whereas someone else gets reward from going out into the garden and planting and playing with trees. It's different. But it's really interesting to ponder that. Like, why does a child like drawing as opposed to playing video games, vice versa? Why do they like playing Lego and not soccer? Why soccer and not Lego? Like, what's really going on there? Is that because of our biology and something to do with our brains? Is it because of our spirit, our consciousness? It's interesting. So high levels of intelligence care about becoming more knowledgeable because of the pleasure that knowledge brings and the pleasure of using that knowledge. And they also have the ability to feel pleasure and pain and associate more knowledge with less pain and more pleasure. And I think the higher the intelligence, the greater the ability for one to feel everything more, to feel more pain, more pleasure, more happiness, more hate, more love on all the spectrums, because the more intelligence just has a greater ability to actually understand, comprehend, to feel, and get clarity on what those emotions are, what they mean, how they link in with who they are to the other people around them and to the rest of the world. If someone intelligent is getting angry, it's because there's a bloody good reason for them to get angry. Where on the lower end of the spectrum, someone gets angry because their team didn't kick the football in the goal. So there's nothing behind that. Whereas someone intelligent would get angry when they see their society being oppressed by a tyrant. So there's a much greater degree of anger because it's warranted, it's thought out, it's considered. Their love for someone is so much greater because they understand what that love means and why it's valuable, why they actually care. Whereas the lower end of the intelligence doesn't get it. It just hasn't thought it through. It just doesn't understand nearly as much. So then the feeling response is so much dimmer and duller compared to what it could be. Don't get me wrong, intelligent people can dull their emotions, and there are the different aspects. Someone might be really intelligent in lots of different fields, but then have very poor emotional, personal intelligence. I'm just saying the capacity. The higher the intelligence, the greater the capacity to feel. Also, the greater the intelligence, the greater the capacity for good and for evil. Something to consider. I've got here definition of a smart person. Someone who supports what's good for themselves and opposes what's not. Intelligence is more concerned with matters of importance, of consequence, rather than things that are trivial, don't have consequence and that don't matter. I think intelligent people will think, what's the worst thing that can happen by not learning about this specific topic? And if there's things in their life which if they don't learn about, they're going to suffer the consequences, say relationships or eating healthy food or having enough money to have shelter over your head, whatever it is, intelligent people will tend to prioritize those things over things that don't matter. Well, it's not that they don't matter, that are secondary. Say playing a game. I love playing games. I want to play a game soon. Or watching a TV show or something else, right? That's all secondary compared to the primary aspects that are important in their life. Because it's like, for instance, if I don't learn how to do yoga, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to me? Oh, I do like yoga, but if I never learned yoga, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to me? Nothing, right? If I don't learn how to garden, if I don't learn how to become a professional chef, what's the worst that can happen? Nothing. If you don't learn about the law, right, and the legal system, what's the worst that can happen? Well, you have to pay a lot of money for nothing. You get treated like crap, you could get locked up, there's lots of terrible consequences, right? And you just add in different examples like that. If you don't learn how to look after your body and to not get sick and to burn off excess body fat and to stay healthy, what's the worst? Oh, you get a disease and you die. So, okay, well, intelligence can prioritize those values according to a hierarchy and go, that's important. If I don't learn that thing, I'm gonna be in a fucking lot of trouble, I'm going to suffer. Okay, let's focus on those things that are really important, that are consequential. And then secondary. You can enjoy how to knit, how to sew. You know, what's the worst that happens if you don't know how to knit? Not much. But sure, it's a great thing to do. Absolutely. But is that a priority? Well, not necessarily. To learn is to change. To change is to learn. If people aren't changing, they aren't learning. If they aren't learning, they can't change. If they don't change, they don't learn. If they don't learn, they don't change. If they don't want to learn, they don't want to change. If people don't want to change, they are happy being the same. If someone's happy not learning and not changing, are they really happy? Or is something really wrong? Something to think about. Logic is merely the method of intelligence. It's how intelligence is able to acquire knowledge, problem solve, and integrate. Intelligence is the ability to acquire and integrate knowledge to perform desired beneficial actions. The greater the intelligence, the faster one can acquire knowledge. Factual knowledge being information that is true in objective reality, not in fiction. This obviously includes the ability to differentiate truth from fiction in the knowledge acquisition phases. One can be clever and devise complex schemes that cause self-harm, but the intelligent man will not cause self-harm. Intelligence acts to one's benefit, not detriment, and can accurately identify truth from fiction. The process of integration is connecting units of information into a bigger whole to gain a broader and clearer narrative perspective on reality. The more intelligent one is, the more aware of the facts of reality they become. This includes inside and outside. And intelligence is basically like a sequence of all these elements put together. All these things work together to make things happen. Creating a very complex system just to hurt yourself is not intelligent, no matter how complex or sophisticated the system. Computational capacity is not intelligence. The ability for a machine to create itself a body, for that body to be in constant pain and to run headfirst into all oncoming cars, and to do this all in less than 2 months is not intelligence. The ability to compute the step-by-step procedure for how it could be done is a computational capacity. Same with an AI or computer that was instructed to do this and then it did it without critical thought. Right? If a machine was able to do that, it's not intelligent, it's fucking stupid. It's like, why didn't you just not do that? What's the benefit to building that? It's silly. It's not intelligence. So I want to look at skill versus intelligence here. So let's say we have a skateboarder and the skateboarder has a kinesthetic intelligence, bodily intelligence, and basically skill is aptitude in one field or activity, a proficiency to perform some kind of task or activity well. Intelligence is a measurement of not only how skilled you are, but also how well you can become skilled in new fields. And skill is highly linked to passion. Earning money is a passion and is a skill. But who's more intelligent, the skateboarder or the billionaire, right? If all you're comparing is their ability to skate or their ability to make money, it's not really either. It's like saying, who's more skilled at skateboarding? Well, the skateboarder. Who's more skilled at making money? Well, the billionaire. But who's better? Well, it totally depends on the goals. It's subjective. They're both happy doing what they're doing. You can't compare intelligence by only comparing singular skills or talents in specific fields. Well, you can, but not entirely, not really. The electrical engineer is most likely going to be more intelligent than the barber, but not necessarily. Sure, it may take a lot more mental effort in that field of work, electrical engineering, to become knowledgeable and capable in comparison to just being a barber, but it doesn't say everything. Right? You may have that engineer who's the best in the world, right? Let's say Nikola Tesla level, but who still believes in a whole lot of nonsense, right? Santa, Easter Bunny, government, all categorized together, just scams that shouldn't exist, make-believe things. Yet the barber doesn't. So expertise in career is a metric, but it's only a small metric, because who's more intelligent? A man super talented at one thing, say physics, or a man who can learn lots of things, new things, to a reasonable level. Let's just say a handyman. Who's more intelligent? You know, Michelangelo being a good painter, or just a handyman again, someone who can actually do stuff. It's like, I don't think that person who's really skilled at one thing is more intelligent than someone who's skilled at lots of different things. Great to be skilled at one thing, like that's awesome. Awesome for them, and society needs that overall. But I think we've been labeling people incorrectly. You know, who's more intelligent, a farmer who doesn't believe any bullshit, or a pseudoscience fake philosopher who can recite all the fake science, history, and philosophy like a robot with charisma and no ums or ahs? It's like, who's more intelligent? You know, someone who just memorizes all the crap they've been told, or someone who doesn't have a super fancy job like a farmer or a barber or a skateboarder, right? But who doesn't believe any bullshit, doesn't fall for any crap. So that's why, like, ultimately, you can't have an IQ test, just one test to show how intelligent someone is with a number. Like, what kind of test would you do? Oh, is there even a test? Well, maybe there isn't. It's called Earth. That's actually a really interesting proposal or concept to consider. Intelligence is useless if you don't use it to gather knowledge, which is information which can be positively used, and use it. Like, oh, this person's really smart. Yeah, they're really smart. What do they know? Nothing. Well, how are they smart then? Oh, because they got a high IQ test, or because their doctor said so, or the teacher said so. But what do they know? What do they know about anything useful? It's like, oh, they know all the answers to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, or that trivia show. It's like, but what can they actually do that's useful and talk about that is of consequence? Things that matter, like how can they apply their knowledge in practical ways for survival? For more than survival, like what can they actually do? Like if you have a great capacity for acquiring knowledge yet you don't, I don't think someone's really intelligent, right? They just have a potential for intelligence. And last of all, briefly on the topic of general versus narrow, and I define general intelligence as being intelligent at all things. That would be kind of like a genius. Well, actually no, genius would be beyond general intelligence. General intelligence is just being able to acquire knowledge and skills in all fields equally easy. And then to be genius would be to be really good at like practically everything, which is, you know, unless you can live to be thousands of years old, is next to impossible. But with general intelligence, this would mean, right, equal passion from gardening to philosophy to equestrianism. I don't think that's right. You know, where you ride horses. I'm going to look that up. Equestrianism. Oh, it is. Equestrian. Oh, now I can't say it properly. Equestrianism, commonly known as horse riding or horseback, right? To be good at all that stuff. Okay, coming back. So that would mean equal passion, equal reward, and equal ease of knowledge acquisition and application in all areas of life. That's how I would define general intelligence. Is anyone even able to do that? No, I don't think so. You can get people who are really good at 10, maybe 20, 50 different things. But how many aspects or skills are there in life? There's thousands, tens of thousands, millions maybe. So being good at 50 different things is amazing, but there's just so many things in this reality. There's a lot of stuff, and you can't be... Yeah, I just don't think general intelligence actually exists. Well, actually, no, you could have a general intelligence without being good at everything. It's just everything you do, right, or everything you start to learn about, you come at it with a level of passion to actually learn about that thing. Because if you're not passionate about something, you're not going to learn shit. And if you're passionate about something, it's because you like it and you're getting some kind of brain reward, right? Because if you're not getting rewarded for learning about something, well, you're not going to keep doing it. And there's also that equal ease of actually being able to do it, getting that feedback loop, like by learning, yeah, I get that, and then wanting to keep going because maybe you enjoy it, but you just suck at it. So you stop, you give up because you're just no good. So that's what I would call general intelligence. Being able to be good at everything one actually does, not necessarily everything that there is to do. Whereas genius would be take that to the next level, really good. And yeah, maybe being good at everything that there is impossible, so we can't compare ourselves to the impossible. So I would say I'd change my definition of genius to someone who is generally intelligent at like a mastery level. Oh, There you go. Boom, I like that. Yeah. And narrow intelligence is obviously the opposite of general intelligence. It's only being able to be good at one or a couple things, and pretty much all of us are just narrowly intelligent. Some of us are more general than others, right? Generalists are more specialists in a way. They're more special, more unique, the general kind of intelligence. Most people are very narrow, which can be good, but it also has a lot of downsides in society, unfortunately, which I talk about in a lot of other videos on the channel. And it also seems to be because of interests. People who are more curious and who tend to have a higher self-esteem, perhaps, will be more inquisitive and learn about a larger array of topics. Anyway, I'm super pumped because that's all my notes at this point, and I'm still a bloody baby in this field of studying intelligence and learning what it means to be intelligent. I know I've still got a long way to go. I almost felt a bit out of my league here, but I wanted to do this because I've learned a lot about intelligence having this little project by myself. I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing this for fame or validation. I'm doing it to help other people who are curious souls like me, who want to learn, doing it for my own selfish desires to become more intelligent and to actually understand the concept of intelligence to a deeper degree. And I know this is going to be very useful for the rest of my life, so I'm very happy at doing it. And in the future, I will look back and I will be able to see how far I've come in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and go, wow, what a progression, what a transformation, a change from where I am now to where I know I will be in the future. Far more knowledgeable and far more intelligent, which is really cool. So I'm glad I've made this video. And if you've enjoyed it, I'm glad you've enjoyed it too. And if you're interested in learning about lots of different stuff, just check out the channel. You may resonate with some of the stuff. You may think some of the stuff is totally bonkers mad. That's fine. That's okay. Check it out, and yeah, we're done. We're done here. All right. See you later. Bye-bye.